Mr. Sims. I look weird, but otherwise I'm real normal. Everything will be cool. Thanks a lot.
For years, everyone believed they knew the real story of Rocky Dennis, the brave boy whose rare condition and unbreakable spirit inspired millions and even a Hollywood film. But before her death, his mother, Rusty Dennis, revealed a version of their life that no one expected.
He started getting a lot of ear infections and sinus infections and sore throats. So when he was 2.5, we had his tonsils out, and the x-rays picked up an abnormality in the bone. So they took x-rays of his entire body, and they found that there was something wrong. They weren't sure what.
A side that was hidden for decades. A truth that completely changes how the world understands Rocky's journey, his struggles, and the legacy he left behind. Childhood that shaped Rocky Dennis. Long before the world knew his name, Roy "Rocky" Dennis grew up in a life shaped by medical predictions that were never supposed to allow him a future. Born on December 4, 1961, Rocky was diagnosed with craniodiaphyseal dysplasia, a rare bone disorder so severe that most children with it did not survive early childhood. Doctors told his mother, Rusty Dennis, that her son would go blind, lose hearing, suffer increasing pain, and likely die before reaching school age. These were not dramatic warnings. These were the medical expectations recorded at UCLA's neuropediatrics department, which followed Rocky's earliest examinations. But Rusty refused to accept a life built around limits. According to first-hand accounts in the Lions Club medical case review and interviews she gave years later, she pushed doctors for every traceable update, every research paper, and every specialist willing to examine a child most medical centers had never seen before. She kept medical records, x-rays, and progress notes because she believed Rocky deserved more than predictions. He deserved proof that he was still fighting. His early life was marked by near-constant assessments. Reports from the UCLA Neurogenetics Clinic described how Rocky's skull growth continued expanding, pressing against his optic nerves and making simple tasks like reading a painful challenge. But teachers at his elementary school remembered something else entirely, a boy who read faster than his classmates and often scored above average in history and vocabulary. In fact, Rocky tested high enough to join enrichment programs, something medical staff once believed impossible. Rusty pushed for his full inclusion in regular classrooms, arguing for him in parent-teacher meetings with documents from the American Academy of Pediatrics Rare Disease Guidelines, proving there was no medical rule that said he should be isolated. Rocky's success became proof that limitations were often assumptions, not truths. But the real pressure came socially. Kids stared. Some avoided him. Others whispered. Yet, according to statements from classmates archived in the Los Angeles County Oral History Project, Rocky handled this with a confidence that surprised everyone. He learned to talk first so people would hear his voice before noticing his face. He learned humor early, using it as a shield and a bridge. Years Hollywood forgot. By the time Rocky entered his early teens, doctors had already rewritten his expected lifespan several times. Medical notes from Children's Hospital Los Angeles indicated that Rocky's skull density had increased to the point where the pressure on his facial nerves was measurable in every scan. But despite these notes, Rocky refused to slow down. He rode his bike, attended school regularly, and pushed into activities no one expected him to attempt. Hollywood's portrayal of Rocky's teenage years simplified the truth. The real version was far heavier. According to Rusty's own journals, parts of which she later shared in interviews archived by the Rare Disease Documentary Initiative, Rocky experienced chronic headaches so intense that he would sometimes sit in silence for hours until the pain passed. Yet he insisted on showing up to school the next morning. School records from Montclair High confirmed Rocky's steady attendance. Teachers described him as the kid who came early and stayed late. He didn't want special treatment, but he did want opportunities. He joined study groups, worked part-time tutoring younger students, and volunteered in the school library. These details rarely made it into public retellings, but they were documented in the school district's archived year-end reports. Socially, Rocky built friendships slowly but intentionally, His classmates recalled in the Montclair Oral History collection that he knew how to put people at ease. He explained his condition openly so they didn't feel awkward asking questions. What Hollywood ignored is how deliberate this was. Rusty taught him early to take control of the room before others could control the narrative about him. But Rocky's life wasn't just about resilience. It was about private battles nobody outside the home saw. Before she died, Rusty admitted in one of her last recorded statements that Rocky's nights were the hardest. She revealed that he sometimes woke up terrified because the pressure in his skull caused momentary vision blackouts. There were periods when he feared he might suddenly go blind for good. Rusty said she kept this hidden from almost everyone, including reporters, because Rocky hated being seen as fragile. Medical reviews from UCLA's craniofacial team confirmed the severity of those episodes, noting that the bone overgrowth around his optic canals had reached a point where doctors no longer predicted if he would lose vision, only when. Yet Rocky continued planning for a future he knew he might never reach. He talked about traveling, working with kids, writing a book about his life, and attending college. Rusty later revealed that these dreams were not just teenage optimism, they were his way of fighting back against time. And as she would confess later, the fight was much closer to ending than the world ever realized. Painfully silent demise. As Rocky entered his later teenage years, the medical reality of his condition became impossible for Rusty to ignore. Even though Rocky still pushed forward, attending school, helping friends, and pretending things were normal, his body was changing faster than anyone expected. Medical literature from the National Organization for Rare Disorders, NORD, explains that craniodiaphyseal dysplasia progressively thickens the skull, compressing nerves and impairing vital functions. Rocky was living inside that pressure every single day. According to archived notes from UCLA craniofacial team case reviews, Rocky's hearing loss had accelerated. The bony overgrowth surrounding his auditory canals narrowed significantly between the ages of 15 and 16. Rusty later revealed in a late-life interview, preserved in the Rare Disease Documentary Initiative, that Rocky sometimes misheard conversations but laughed it off to keep people comfortable. He didn't want to remind anyone that he was slowly losing what little sensory function he had left. One of the most painful truths Rusty later admitted was how often Rocky hid severe headaches. Records from Children's Hospital Los Angeles show that patients with this condition experience skull pressure strong enough to disrupt sleep cycles and trigger nerve pain. Rusty said Rocky would sometimes press his head against cold tiles because it was the only thing that eased the heat building behind his eyes. Throughout this decline, Rocky stayed determined to live normally. He participated in school events, planned road trips with friends, and talked about studying psychology. His teachers wrote in Montclair's district archives that he was the student who refused to complain. These accounts echo many of the first-hand letters and statements collected in the Los Angeles County Oral History Project, where friends described Rocky as present, even when you could see he was hurting. Rusty, however, saw what no one else did. In one of her last recorded statements, available through the UCLA Medical Oral History Program, she confessed she was terrified that every night could be his last. She recalled moments when Rocky's vision would blur suddenly, leaving him momentarily blind. He hid these episodes from his classmates. Rusty hid them from almost everyone else. And then there was the emotional weight. Rusty admitted she avoided talking about death with Rocky because he was still busy planning a future he knew he might never reach. He talked about getting a car, having a job, living independently, and proving every medical prediction wrong. Years later, Rusty finally revealed that the hardest part wasn't the medical decline. It was watching Rocky stay hopeful even when his body was failing faster than he let on. Final months and hidden truths. As Rocky approached 16, the pressure of his condition intensified. Craniodiaphyseal dysplasia, the disorder that had defined his life, began to dominate it. UCLA craniofacial specialists had documented the progressive thickening of his skull for years. By late 1977, scans revealed severe compression on his cranial nerves, affecting vision, hearing, and motor control. According to the UCLA Department of Neurology archives, this stage is considered the most dangerous phase of the condition, as bone growth can start impacting brain function directly. Despite worsening symptoms, Rocky maintained the humor and resilience he was known for. Rusty often said that even in the quietest moments, he would find ways to make those around him laugh. He stayed involved in school projects, debated in class, and continued tutoring younger students. Letters preserved in the Montclair High School archive show that teachers and friends noticed his remarkable courage and determination, even as his body grew weaker. But at home, Rusty bore witness to realities Hollywood never showed. She later described nights filled with pain, when Rocky would retreat into silence. The headaches, blurred vision, and fatigue had become daily companions. Rusty's personal journals, now housed in the Rare Disease Documentary Initiative, detail her attempts to soothe him. Cold compresses, quiet music, and storytelling, anything to give him comfort without emphasizing the inevitability of his decline. The final days were particularly harrowing. Unlike the film Mask, which portrays Rocky's mother holding him at the moment of death, Rusty revealed the truth. She was absent due to legal and personal matters. The devastating news arrived via a phone call, shattering her world. In interviews recorded for the Los Angeles Rare Disease Oral Histories, Rusty reflected on the surreal pain of losing her son remotely, despite having fought every day of his life to shield him. Following his death in 1978, Rocky's remains were donated to science, as per his mother's decision. Researchers at UCLA used his skull, scans, and medical records to advance understanding of craniodiaphyseal dysplasia. Studies published in the Journal of Craniofacial Genetics and Developmental Biology referenced Rocky's case extensively, contributing valuable insights into the progression of rare craniofacial disorders. Rusty later explained that this scientific contribution became part of Rocky's living legacy. While Hollywood immortalized him on screen, the real-life Rocky helped shape medical knowledge, offering hope for future children facing similar diagnoses. In her own words, the legacy she wanted the world to understand was not just courage and laughter, but also the tangible ways Rocky's life advanced science. Hollywood versus reality. Rusty finally speaks. When Mask was released in 1985, millions of people saw Rocky Dennis as a boy who faced adversity with humor and courage, surrounded by the unwavering love of his mother. Eric Stoltz portrayed Rocky, and Cher embodied Rusty, winning critical acclaim for her performance. The movie amplified Rocky's story, emphasizing optimism, wit, and the emotional bond between mother and son. But as Rusty later revealed, the film left out key elements of the life she and Rocky had actually lived. In interviews conducted in the early 2000s, Rusty explained that Hollywood softened many truths. They wanted a story people could carry out of the theater and feel inspired by, she said. But Rocky's life wasn't always cinematic. It was messy, painful, and complicated. For instance, the film shows Rocky dying in his mother's arms. Rusty clarified that she was not present during his final moments. Legal matters had drawn her away, and she received the news via telephone. This detail alone reshapes the narrative, revealing the isolation, guilt, and grief she carried silently for decades. Additionally, the movie depicts a cheerful household, while the real home life was chaotic and unpredictable, filled with challenges from neighbors, social workers, and medical crises that Hollywood could not fully portray. Beyond the inaccuracies in storytelling, Rusty revealed another truth: Rocky's contributions to medical research. His skull and scans were preserved and donated to UCLA researchers, helping advance understanding of craniodiaphyseal dysplasia. Medical papers and journals cite Rocky's case repeatedly, demonstrating that his legacy went far beyond inspiration. It advanced scientific knowledge. Rusty also addressed the myth of constant bravery. While Rocky often used humor to engage others and hide his pain, he faced private struggles with fear, fatigue, and the reality of a shortened life. Letters she saved from friends and teachers, preserved in the Montclair High School archive, show how he occasionally withdrew from activities or needed support in silence, a side the film never conveyed. By speaking out later in life, Rusty sought to honor the full, complicated story. She wanted the public to understand that inspiration does not erase suffering. The real Rocky Dennis was not just a symbol of courage. He was a teenager navigating pain, joy, love, and loss, all under the constant shadow of a rare, debilitating condition. Humor and resilience behind the smile. Rocky Dennis's life was defined not only by his rare medical condition but by the extraordinary way he met each day with courage and humor. Craniodiaphyseal dysplasia, as described by the National Organization for Rare Disorders, NORD, caused his skull to thicken rapidly, compressing nerves and creating chronic pain, visual impairment, and fatigue. Yet friends, classmates, and teachers remembered him differently from the clinical notes. According to interviews collected in the Los Angeles County Oral History Project, Rocky developed a quick wit from an early age, turning curiosity and staring into opportunities for jokes. He would preempt awkward glances with humor, diffusing tension and making people comfortable around him. Humor became both a survival tool and a bridge to friendship. In school, Rocky participated in debates, classroom projects, and even tutoring younger students. Teachers described him as the student who would joke through challenges but never avoided responsibility. His humor was not simply entertainment, it was a deliberate strategy to normalize his presence and control the narrative of how others perceived him. In oral histories preserved by the Rare Disease Documentary Initiative, she explained that she taught Rocky early to confront life head-on and use laughter to assert confidence. She knew medical predictions could not define him, and instilled a sense of agency and pride in her son. Her approach was unconventional, chaotic at times, but it created a household where Rocky felt empowered rather than pitied. Beyond humor, Rocky demonstrated incredible resilience. Despite doctors predicting he would not survive beyond 7 years old, he celebrated each birthday and milestone, turning limitations into achievements. His participation in social activities, his insistence on schooling, and his determination to maintain friendships showed a level of mental and emotional strength far beyond his years. Researchers studying similar craniofacial disorders note that resilience, family support, and social integration often correlate with better emotional outcomes for children with rare diseases. Even in private, Rocky's character shone. Rusty later shared that he faced pain and fear without complaint, often retreating to quiet reflection before rejoining life with laughter. Friends who visited the home recalled afternoons filled with jokes, music, and spirited conversation, a stark contrast to the hospital charts and x-rays. These moments, preserved in oral histories, reveal a young man whose essence could not be captured fully by Hollywood or headlines, someone whose humor and resilience defined him as much as his medical condition did. A chaotic, loving household. Rusty Dennis, Rocky's mother, was often described as fierce, unconventional, and larger than life. Her parenting style defied traditional norms, creating a home that some outsiders labeled chaotic but that ultimately nurtured Rocky's unique spirit. According to her interviews archived in the Rare Disease Documentary Initiative, Rusty embraced a free-spirited approach, allowing music, friends, and laughter to flow freely through their house. For many, Rusty's household might have seemed disorderly. Neighbors sometimes complained about noise, social workers occasionally questioned the stability of the environment, and teachers worried about the consistency of Rocky's daily routine. Yet these chaotic elements were balanced by a core of unconditional love and advocacy. Rusty fought tirelessly against medical professionals, school administrators, and even strangers who doubted Rocky's potential. UCLA craniofacial team notes indicate that parental advocacy can significantly improve quality of life and social integration for children with rare craniofacial conditions. In this home, Rocky learned to navigate life with courage and humor. Rusty encouraged him to explore, engage with others, and resist the stigma surrounding his appearance. He rode bikes, played games, and socialized with peers despite the constant stares and occasional ridicule. The household chaos also served a protective function. Rusty's approach created a sense of normalcy that shielded Rocky from the emotional weight of his prognosis. Music, friends dropping by, and vibrant daily routines ensured that Rocky's life was not dominated by medical visits or hospital stays. She intentionally filled the home with joy and stimulation, making every day memorable, especially as the effects of craniodiaphyseal dysplasia began to intensify. Importantly, Rusty's methods reflected a broader truth about parenting a child with a rare, debilitating condition. Emotional resilience often matters as much as medical treatment. Studies published in the Journal of Pediatric Psychology highlight that children with chronic illnesses thrive in environments where parental support emphasizes autonomy, social connection, and emotional expression. Rusty balanced chaos with fierce advocacy. She ensured that Rocky's needs, medical, educational, and social, were met, often confronting professionals directly. While outsiders perceived the home as unconventional, the combination of love, laughter, and protection shaped Rocky into a resilient, humorous, and socially capable young man. Her household created a foundation where Rocky could embrace life fully, despite the limitations of his condition. Legacy beyond Hollywood: Science and Truth. Rocky Dennis passed away in 1978 at just 16 years old, leaving behind a story that Hollywood would later transform into the film Mask. While the movie immortalized his courage and humor, it omitted some of the most significant aspects of his real-life legacy. Rusty Dennis, his mother, revealed decades later that Rocky's contributions extended far beyond inspiration. They advanced medical science. Following his death, Rocky's remains were donated to UCLA researchers studying craniodiaphyseal dysplasia. His skull, preserved tissue, and extensive medical records became invaluable resources for doctors and geneticists seeking to understand the disorder. Rocky's case provided crucial insights into cranial bone overgrowth, nerve compression, and long-term disease progression. Rusty later emphasized in interviews archived in the Rare Disease Documentary Initiative that she wanted the world to see Rocky not only as a symbol of courage, but as a real contributor to knowledge that could help future patients. Even in death, she said, he was teaching the world something that could save lives. This scientific legacy is often overlooked in popular retellings. Yet it represents one of the most tangible ways Rocky's life made a lasting impact. Rusty also clarified another truth that contradicted the Hollywood narrative. Unlike in Mask, she was not present when Rocky passed. Legal obligations and personal circumstances removed her from his final moments, and she received the news by telephone. For years, she carried the grief and guilt silently, knowing that the world only saw the idealized version of her son's death. In her oral histories with UCLA, she described this period as the most painful of her life, highlighting the personal cost of maintaining the myth versus living the truth. Additionally, Rocky's case became a reference point for medical education. Students in craniofacial and genetic medicine classes study his X-rays and clinical history to understand the nuances of rare bone disorders. In this way, his short life continues to educate and inform new generations of doctors, fulfilling a legacy that extends beyond emotional inspiration into concrete scientific advancement. Rusty's late-life revelations peeled back the layers of myth, showing Rocky as a real teenager, humorous, resilient, and complex. He experienced pain, faced isolation, and contended with limitations, but he also taught lessons about courage, perseverance, and the tangible impact a life can have on the world. Her willingness to finally speak the unvarnished truth ensures that Rocky Dennis is remembered not only as a Hollywood icon, but as a real person, whose life and death left lasting contributions to both human understanding and medical science.